Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to Cram number 4. It is almost here. Before I forget, I just got to ask, has anybody received an email from DCAS with any type of admission notice? Nobody in this room. Oh, on the DCAS when you log in? Okay, so somebody's saying it says July 20th, you guys and girls will be notified of your test date, which is going to be, I think, in October or something like that now. I still see those questions coming in. So next week we got our last cram. You're right here. What do you got, 15 or 16 or 17 days left? You just got to keep the foot on the pedal and just keep moving forward. It's going to be here and it's going to be over. Before you know it, it will be over. So after next week, you guys want me to talk? I don't know. I'll go home. I'm still going to get paid. So after next week, we're going to have one 7-hour all-day cram. They sent out an email, social media stuff. I am not here to push it, whether I have 2 people in front of me or 1,000. I'd rather have 1,000 because I perform better with an audience. It doesn't make a difference to me. It doesn't do anything to my pocket. But I'm telling you guys and girls, seriously, from taking 3 prior exams that I went to every school that had an all-day cram, you're going to listen to so much material Monday before your exam on a Wednesday or Thursday, depending on when you're going to do it. It is well worth the $50. If you don't want to do it, that's on you. I'm just letting you know that we're having it, and we're having it at a location in Valley Stream. But it may change because there are a lot of people who signed up, and we need to have enough space and chairs. Like with these big halls, and when we tell them we need a space for 1,000 people, they're like, we don't have 1,000 chairs. So we're going to be renting chairs. So the bottom line is, if you want to go, you need to sign up because eventually it has to stop. We can't fit any more people. Enough of the all-day cram. We have a lot of stuff to cover today, from anywhere from 213 to 217. I am going to start with 217, collisions. There are certain procedures in there that I want to hit. So we're going to go page 74. If you look at the average here from 217 on sergeant exams, it looks like anywhere from 4 to 7 questions is the average. And you look at the chart, I mean, you don't need a brain surgeon to figure out what procedure they love. I mean, department vehicle accidents, or if you want to call it department vehicle collisions, every exam, some of them multiple questions, all right? That procedure you got to know in and out, like I told you when we taught it in the regular class, okay? So we are going to start with regular collisions 217.01 first, which is on page 75. Let's go right into the box. I don't have to tell you what a PAR is called. It's actually the MV104AN. I'm sure everybody in here has filled it out, unless you've been in transit and never handled a vehicle collision, or maybe in housing. If you haven't, this is going to all be new stuff to you, okay? So in the box, a vehicle collision includes the following: a collision on private property, parked vehicles, unattended vehicles, injuries to any animal, as well as bicycle collisions. But a vehicle collision will not include devices that are moved by human power or used exclusively on stationary rails or tracks, like a subway or something like that, all right? But when they say devices moved by human power, don't let them throw you off. Because if you have somebody on a bicycle gets involved, yes, that's going to be handled like a vehicle collision, all right? A bicycle, e-bikes, and e-scooters have their own procedure here in tonight's lesson, and that will be handled on a PAR, as well as motorized scooters. Right into the procedure. UMOS, when you respond to a vehicle collision, park the department vehicle behind vehicles involved so traffic will not be impeded. First responding unit, whether it's radio, pickup, etc., regardless of your command, your assignment, or if it occurred on a precinct border, you ought to interview motorists, witnesses, and prepare the PAR. And now it says if necessary, because that's somewhat new. But before we go further, whoever you are that gets that job, you're doing it, no matter where you're assigned, all right? You're not calling over the appropriate precinct and sector. You are handling that, okay? So it says, prepare the PAR if necessary, and we'll talk about that in a second. Don't tell the motorist to wait for the precinct of occurrence or highway. You're going to do the PAR, but you will not make a PAR if it's property damage only. So there's a lot of new information that came out regarding that. So in the box here, we talk about property damage only. So if you go to a job and there's property damage only, what do you do as a cop? It says you give the motorist the following 3 forms. Report of motor vehicle accident, which is actually an MV 104, that's not the PAR, collision information exchange, and also what you should know about vehicle collisions. That's what you have to give the motorist. Inform the motorist they must prepare and forward the MV 104 to New York State DMV within 10 days. If there's damage over 1,000, failure to do so may result in their license and or reg being suspended. Instruct each motorist involved that they are to exchange pertinent information, and you're going to give back the radio code as 1099T3, which is referred to DMV, and then resume patrol or whatever assignment you were on. Now, they have a list of what is not considered property damage only for this procedure, and you have to do a PAR MV 104 AN. So right here, you have a vehicle collision where a person is trapped, injured, incapacitated, or dead. Got to do a PAR. Vehicle collision involving a deer or domestic animal. Got to do a PAR. Any vehicle needs a tow. Damage to property other than a vehicle involved or the contents thereof. Disputes between the motorist or the unwilling to exchange information or paperwork. We are going to do a PAR. Any act of suspected criminality is going to go on a PAR. And any vehicle classified as a qualifying vehicle and city-involved vehicle collision, we are going to handle it utilizing a PAR. If I'm writing a question, because that's new, I would definitely hit something to do with that there, right? Next page. If there's injuries, call an ambulance. If the person is unconscious and removed to a hospital, you're going to place a 95 tag on the person. So we're going to talk about toe tag, 95 tag in AIDs. So look what it says, unconscious and removed to a hospital. It does not say DOA. Usually a toe tag goes on any body part, or fetus going to the morgue, which means you're fucking dead. But over here, it says unconscious, going to the hospital, gonna put a toe tag on. So if they could wake up with a toe tag on them, or they may wind up dying, all right? If we have an SPI, serious physical injury, and an STV, serious traffic violation, we have to give a PBT, which is a preliminary breath test, to all operators involved. So, on test day, if they're going to go to this, there's a whole list of the STVs, serious traffic violations. We have a little box on the right. I personally would not memorize them. I would know what it says in the box. Anything to do with 511 in the VTL, the 600 series of the VTL, and then 1100 to 1212, the VTL. Hopefully they will indicate that in the stem of the question instead of writing the actual, what it's called in the VTL. It's too much to memorize if you start with that list, all right? Just remember the formula. SPI plus STV is going to equal a PBT. Kind of sounds like all kinds of fucking sexually transmitted diseases. But just remember it, that is something new as well, all right? So we're going to give them a PBT unless they're removed for immediate medical attention. If the cop is not qualified, we're going to request another uniformed member of service who is. Now, I want you to highlight that and just stick that in your head. Because in department vehicle collisions, the sergeant is going to also do a PBT. But if he or she is not qualified, it's going to be a little different on who they go to, all right? So look at how it's going to change when we hit 21706. Refusal of the breath test is a violation of the VTL 1194 1B, and a summons may be issued. We'll document either the refusal or the results of the PBT on the PAR. Divert traffic if necessary using 3 things: traffic cones, turn lights, danger signs. If the collision is on a highway or a bridge, the first cone goes at least what? 200 feet from the collision. I'm going to say it again so you guys don't mess up on test day. When it comes to the numbers, you got to remember what are they actually referring to. This says at least 200 feet. So that means if you do 300 feet on test day, you are good. It has to be at least 200 feet. Obtain license, reg, and insurance card, record, and return. If you follow the arrow to the box on the right, it gives you a list of vehicles that are not required to have insurance. Taxis, buses, rental vehicles, Public Service Commission, ICC authorized vehicles, government-owned vehicles, certain farm vehicles, and diplomats. Well, so when you see Public Service Commission or ICC and you say to yourself, what is that? Don't do that. They're going to write Public Service Commission or ICC. That's another thing. At this point in the game, you should not be what-ifing yourself to death. Sometimes I read some of these emails that people write, and you start going, not you in the room, but they start going off. What if this happened? If it doesn't say it in black and white, don't worry about it. If you start doing the what if 2 weeks prior, you're going to drive yourself crazy, all right? Have vehicles removed ASAP. Attempt to ID uninvolved witnesses and record their statements. Get name, address, phone number of as many witnesses as possible. We determine the cause of accidents by inquiry and observation. Survey for fraud indicators and take summary action if necessary. If a pedestrian or a bicyclist was attempting to lawfully cross a street and the motor vehicle failed to exercise due care, it says for the cops to contemplate taking enforcement action under the Admin Code 19-190, which is actually covered in 21718 procedure today. The cops will prepare collision information exchange. So that's the first piece of paper the cops are going to do for a vehicle collision. So you're going to hear vehicle collision or vehicle accident. Just so you know, the NYPD changed the term accident to collision. DMV still calls it accidents, all right? We call them collisions, but they're still called accidents in DMV's eyes. So the first piece of paper the cop prepares is the collision information exchange. You give to the operators to fill out the bottom part of the form. Advise the operator, or if they're incapacitated, that another participant or owner of the vehicle fills out the bottom. If there is no other participant or the vehicle owner is not available, then the cop completes the bottom of the form. All right, next piece of paper. The cop will prepare the PAR MV-104-AN. So we're assuming that it's not just property damage, because we saw on the prior page property damage. You're not doing the MV-104-AN, all right? So you're going to use your department mobile device, if available, cell phone, tablet, and prepare it directly into the form's MV-104 system. Otherwise, do it the old-fashioned handwritten way, but make sure it's legible. Account for all passengers, taking care to note their seating positions, name and injury, if any. Attempt to ID the passengers, photo ID if possible. Note on the PAR if you cannot get ID. Passenger info will go in the all involved sections of the PAR, which is A through F. We got to draw a line through unused boxes of this section and initial it. So when they leave with a PAR, because they can get a copy, so they cannot write anything in there that doesn't belong there. That's why you draw a line and initial it, right? Do the same on the back in the persons killed or injured section, which is boxes A through E. Bicycle operator will be vehicle number 2 on the PAR if a bicycle was involved, okay? If it's a rental bike, name, address of the bike rental company goes in the registration captions. If it's an e-bike with or without pedals or an e-scooter involved, you got to check those boxes. If you're doing a paper PAR, that will go in the details section. We get the VIN from the car from 2 different places, the dashboard and the door. Make sure the VINs match and list them in the accident description office notes section and in Forms MV, the standalone caption. Top of the next page. So far, the cops are filling out 2 pieces of paper. Collision Information Exchange, MV-104-AN. Here is one that may come into play. an MV-104S, which is called a truck and bus supplemental PAR. So when you hear that title, truck and bus, you should automatically be thinking big vehicles. But there's going to be an exception in there, which they will get a lot of people. So when do we do an MV-104S? If we have a condition of severity, we will do an MV-104S for each qualifying vehicle and attach it to the corresponding PAR. So all we need is one condition of severity. So if we have one condition of severity and 7 qualifying vehicles, how many MV-104Ss are we doing? 7, all right? Don't let them fool you, okay? So first you need to know what a condition of severity is. Right side of the box. At least one person with a fatal injury. At least one person transported for immediate medical attention. At least one vehicle towed or transported from the scene for other than a flat tire. So if you got one of those, you got half of the equation correct. Now we need to know what a qualifying vehicle is. Remember, you're going to be thinking big trucks, all right? Commercial truck with a gross weight rating or a combined weight rating of more than 10,000 pounds. What are they going to do on test day? The fucking truck is going to be exactly how many pounds? 10,000. Just like the property that's in the command is going to be there for exactly 30 days. Because they know you're going to remember 30, you're going to remember 10,000. Again, can't stress how important it is with these numbers, all right? What else is a qualifying vehicle? This is the one I would watch out for. Any vehicle with a hazmat placard. You have a fucking smart car. Or pick the smallest car you can think of. If it has a hazmat placard and we have a condition of severity, guess what? Because of that hazmat placard, we got to do an MV-104S, all right? And then the last one is a bus with seating for 9 or more, including the driver. So it's going to be one MV-104S for every qualifying vehicle as long as we have one condition of severity. All right, regarding vehicle type, the cops will inspect the vehicles involved and indicate what type of vehicle in the vehicle type caption of the PAR. Here are all the codes. I highly doubt they're going to ask you. I mean, they're pretty much self-explanatory. Go to the next part. Check the box. Dupe copy required for on the back of the PAR and other city agency for the following. Most of these you can figure out based on what took place, what box you should be checking. But there's one or two that may throw people off. All right, first up, FDNY Actions and Claims Unit box will be checked if we have a fire truck, EMS, hydrant, or an alarm box involved in a vehicle collision. That's easy, all right? Next one, Consumer Affairs. Tow truck or pedicab licensed by DCA. That's easy as well. Next one, DOT, Department of Transportation. Crash, cushion, easy, all right? This is the one here that I always highlighted when I was studying and when I teach. Department of Parks. The first one makes sense. Person killed, injured on a road that is in a city park. It has park right in it. The next one is where what would throw people off. Damage to any city tree. It does not have to be in a park. You got to check off Department of Parks. All right, Department of Ed, Office of Pupil Transportation. If we have a collision involving any school bus with or without kids on board. TLC, Taxi for Hire, vehicle licensed by TLC, that's easy. Comptroller, that's easy as well. All if New York City personnel or properties involved. Now the next one, the last one. For this procedure, 21701, we are going to check off missing persons, ME unit, and highways, CIS, which is Collision Investigation Squad, if we have a DOA. That's what it says in this procedure. Now look what we referenced on the right side, which is also in the booklet. From the bicycle collision procedure, it says if somebody's killed or seriously injured and likely or critically injured, a due copy of the PAR goes to Highway CIS. In that procedure, you don't have to just be dead. You could be critically injured. By the way, who determines a critical injury? EMS, not us, all right? So that's a good comparison there, how it changes from one procedure to the next. Next page. If we have injuries involved, we have to note it on the PAR if the airbag inflated and deployed. We have a DWI collar out of this collision. Obviously, we got to bring a copy of the PAR for the ADA. Here is the whole critical injury. DOA, seriously injured, likely, or critically injured, determined by EMS. It says designated MOS from Highway CIS, coordinates the investigation, and presents facts to the DA. Now, pending the arrival of EMS, we may allow the injured person to be treated by a Good Samaritan. We have an acronym there for you, all right? EMT, or actually EDP, EMT, doctor, paramedic. So this list also pops up in 21601, aided. It's the same list, the same rules that you follow. We may allow somebody to help out. They have to be an EMT, doctor, or paramedic. It does not say nurse, so if they want to get stupid on test day, nurse is not good enough, all right? It specifies those three people. As treat in your presence if possible. They volunteer, obviously. We believe they're professional. We won't ask for their ID until they're all done helping. And then we record their name and address in our digital activity log and on the PAR. They are there to help. Removal procedure for the injured will be determined by EMS, not the person that is helping out. All right, back to the cop. Inform that they can get a copy of the PAR online at New York State DMV or the department's public internet website. Also, they can get a copy through the precinct of occurrence within 30 days, either in person or by mail. By mail or in person at the precinct, they need a valid photo ID. By mail also needs a self-addressed stamped envelope and copies of their ID. And then it says mail request without a copy of proper photo ID will actually be returned. Next one. This was actually an answer on a prior sergeant exam. Before you guys and girls did PARs on your phones, all right? If the PAR is handwritten, we sign and deliver to the desk officer, precinct of occurrence, regardless of your assignment. So the question basically had, I'm just going to make it up, 5th precinct cop, let's say 2-8 cop, doing a transport down to central booking. They handled a vehicle collision in the confines of the 5th precinct. So it was a 5th precinct vehicle collision. They handled it. The cops came back to the 2-8, gave the PAR to the desk, and the answer was for the desk officer to tell them to do what? What do you think? Bring that shit down to the 5th precinct. You got to give it to the 5th precinct where it occurred. Now it's a little different because you're doing it on the phone. But they could still throw it in the mix that the phone is down, the tablet is down, and now you did a handwritten copy, and where is it going, okay? Make an activity log entry. Command clerk, make required entries into forms for PARs prepared during the tour. Desk officer duties. Review and sign handwritten PARs and electronically sign off on those made in forms. Ensure required entries are made in forms MV104 system. Ensure deficiencies are addressed by the reporting officer during the tour. That one could get some people if they don't really look at it hard. When I see deficiencies and make sure they're corrected, automatically, who am I thinking of? Probably the same person you're thinking of. Training sergeant. No. This right here is the desk officer duty, all right? Do not accept PARs for collisions occurring in another command, and you forward handwritten PARs to the traffic safety officer upstairs. All right, traffic safety cop. Review all PARs and inform the training sergeant of any deficiencies. After review of handwritten PARs, ensure the barcode cover sheet is generated from the form system. Ensure completed handwritten PARs are scanned and electronically attached to the digital entry the clerk made. Next page. We're still on traffic safety cop duties. Send copies marked due copy required for to the appropriate agency in an addressed white envelope and forward via mail and distribution unit. Fax copies of all PARs involving crossover accidents to who? 2 people, Corp Counsel and Highway District. Now, when you hear crossover accident, you think like you actually jumped over a barrier or the divider and you're on oncoming traffic. No, if you just hit the median or the divider, that's considered a crossover accident, and those 2 people have to get a copy of the report. And traffic safety sergeant, only one duty. Monitor and review all PARs. Let's go to the next page. Bottom of page 80. Accidents and collisions, city involved. This procedure, you have a choice of 3 different pieces of paper. Only one of them will be done, depending on the scenario that you're presented with. So, you will do an aided if we have an injury case not involving a motor vehicle or bicycle where the city might be involved. And if we are doing this aided, the city's involved, it says you have to ensure the aided report indicates city involved, agency name, and code. That's what it says here. In 216.02, right here in the box, when you have an aided case where the city is involved, you also have to indicate agency code, official diagnosis, description of the area, witness's name, address, phone number, and the details of the aided. That's the first scenario. Injury case, no vehicle, no bicycle. Next page. When will we do a PAR? Obviously, all vehicle, bicycle collisions where the city might be involved. We will check the appropriate additional copies required for a box on the back. And the last scenario, accident report, city involved. When do we do that? Any other incident where we have property damage, nobody's injured, and there's no vehicle or no bicycle involved, we are doing an accident report, city involved. Whatever piece of paper we do, we obtain names and addresses of witnesses at the scene, including potential witnesses favorable to the city. Slide to the box on the right. The uniform member taking the report. Inform the person they have 90 days to file a claim with the city comptroller. Prior test question. You couldn't ask for an easier question. They wanted you to tell the person how much time they had. I don't remember all the choices, but I'm going to say it was 30, 60, 45, 90, or maybe 45, 60, 90, and 180 days, because those numbers come throughout the guide somewhere. Like when you see a question like that, and I tell you this, been telling you this all along, when you see a question like that, without even looking at the fucking choices, you know the answer. Pull that answer out, then look at the choices and hit the right button, because you may second guess yourself. When you know it, you know it. And studies show when you answer something and you go back, because you will be able to go back and check your answers, and you change it, you probably fucked up. Unless for sure you know you messed something up and now you figured it out, all right? You usually stick with your first choice. So 90 days, you couldn't ask for an easier question. Submit reports to the desk officer. Desk officer, review and approve the aided, forward the PAR in a normal manner, and forward the city involved as per instructions on the form. Then the desk officer has to determine which city agency is involved as follows. Pretty much this box, this list, is the same we covered in 217.01. Nothing, maybe 1 or 2 new ones in there, but no tricks. You can figure out what box you're going to check. Let's go to next page. Probably the most important procedure in 217. Department Vehicle Collisions. So without even looking at that, I'm just going to throw something throw something at you guys and girls. Department Vehicle Collision. Let's say, God forbid, we have a death in a department vehicle collision. Is the patrol supervisor going to be the investigating supervisor? No. Is there still work for the patrol supervisor to do? Yes. Do not let them fool you, all right? Because when we have a death, you're going to see it's going to be the CO duty captain who's going to be the IS. For your exam, I'm going to say they're going to have a property damage only vehicle collision question. So you can be the patrol supervisor and you can be the investigating supervisor who has a lot of duties. So they have to make you the investigating supervisor so they can ask you those duties, all right? So I'm glad most, from what I heard, everybody knew that answer. You as the patrol sergeant, no matter what it is, you still have responsibilities at a department vehicle collision. All right, let's start with the cop duties. Operator, you're going to stop the vehicle immediately. I don't even know why this is fucking still in there, because you're not supposed to smoke anywhere in any city building, car, or anywhere, but it's still in the book, all right? Could they ask it? Of course. Without cigarettes. Use four-way flashes, raise the hood. Use flares or any other warning devices. Do not move unless the location is hazardous and likely to cause additional collisions. request an ambulance if necessary, request operators, witnesses, and occupants to remain pending the arrival of the patrol supervisor, obtain name, address, home, and business numbers of all persons involved and witnesses, request patrol supervisor, precinct of occurrence, to respond. If unavailable, Central calls the patrol sergeant from the adjoining precinct. And if the operator is not from the precinct of occurrence, an available supervisor from the MOS's command will handle and take all the steps the patrol sergeant was supposed to do. All right, patrol sergeant, precinct of occurrence. Respond to the scene, ascertain details of the collision. You will be the investigating supervisor or request the response of the appropriate investigating supervisor. Here we go with the rule. If we have a DOA or serious injury to anyone, the investigating supervisor will be the precinct CO duty captain. So, for them to make you the IS on test day for your vehicle collision, you have to have property damage or minor injuries. Once they say serious injury or anything worse than that, you cannot be the IS, all right? I'm going to have to bet you're going to have a property damage or a minor injury vehicle collision so they can make you the IS. Notify desk officer of the details of the collision. Top of the next page. Desk officer. Notify the CO to respond to the scene of the collision when applicable. That means that we have a DOA or seriously injured. Notify the patrol bureau of the collision, and you're going to document that notification as well as the borough collision number in the telephone record. We're going to have a little recap of where your numbers go as the desk officer on the next page, I believe, all right? Request the duty captain to respond when applicable. Patrol sergeant, precinct of occurrence. If MOS is injured and requires hospital treatment, notify operations unit promptly. Make additional notifications before final reports are prepared to update ops on the injured MOS's status. Here is the most recent change. If we have an SPI and an STV, same thing we covered in 217.01, the patrol sergeant, if qualified, is going to give a PBT to the MOS operator unless they were removed to the hospital. And if they're not qualified, now look what it says. Patrol sergeant requests a response of a qualified highway unit supervisor to give the PBT. Remember I told you in 217.01 to make note. It says for the cop to do the PBT in 217.01. If the cop was not qualified, who was supposed to do it? It just said another qualified MOS. For Department of Vehicle Collisions, if the patrol sergeant is not qualified, we want another supervisor that is from highway that's going to come and do it, all right? Patrol sergeant is to ensure civilian operators get PBT tested as well unless they went to the hospital. If probable cause MOS operators under the influence affect the arrest, immediately notify IAB, comply with 20840 intox or impaired driver arrest. That I would definitely highlight. If I'm writing a test question, that's getting incorporated. That is definitely something testable and somewhat new. You're going to do the PAR in quadruplicate in forms and give one to the operator, and all three others are going to the desk. Note the following. Fill in the numbered boxes with the proper entry as determined from the corresponding code list on the cover sheet. If it doesn't apply, you enter a dash. If unknown, enter an X in the corresponding box. If there's an injury, period, doesn't say what kind of injury. If there's an injury, note if airbags inflated and deployed if applicable. The operator's address is going to be the command address for a vehicle collision. In line of duty, when it asks for the cop's address who was injured, it's going to be Left Rack City Plaza. Sergeant is going to print police involved at the top of the PAR under the caption police accident report. Have 2 sets of photos taken showing damage to all vehicles, but if we have an injury or DOA, they want us to take it at the scene if possible. And what do we do with the photos? They get secured in a jewelry security envelope. Are we vouchering them? No, we are not vouchering them, all right? And indicate if responding to an emergency and what warning devices were used. So far, the patrol sergeant did PAR in quadruplicate, so we got 4, even though it's in the fucking phone, it says do it in quadruplicate, right? We have 2 sets of photos. I know you, hopefully you remember when I taught the regular class. I like to break down where everything goes, all right? So 4 PARs, 2 sets of photos. He already gave 1 out. Patrol sergeant gave 1 to the operator. So we have 3 left, which is going to be all handled by the desk officer, and we have 2 sets of photos to deal with. And there's going to be another piece of paper coming in the mix soon. So the sergeant indicates if responding to an emergency and what warning devices were used. In the box, emergency operation. If the collision occurred during emergency operation, the sergeant will write the letter P in a circle next to the cop's name at the top of the PAR. That is to prevent your insurance from being jacked up, all right? Also, besides the P, the sergeant will write the following statement. Highly doubt you need to know this, but just be familiar with the verbiage. Collision occurred in a police vehicle owned or operated by the NYPD while responding to an emergency situation. Returning does not count. Emergency operation is defined as the following. Operating, parking while transporting a perp, aided, blood products involving imminent health risk, pursuits, responding to 911 or other emergencies. So you've handled the job, you're done, you go 98, you get into a vehicle collision, the letter P on test day does not belong. In reality, I hope every one of you, your boss would do the right thing and write the P so your insurance doesn't get jacked up. But that's the rule on test day, all right? All right, under the box, next piece of paper. Sergeant, prepare and sign MV-104L and attach it to the PAR. Now, there's a little bit of a conflict in the book here. In one step tells you to do an MV-104, and then another step tells you to do MV-104L. One is supposed to be done if you guys and girls get involved in a vehicle collision, which is the MV-104L, and then the other one is supposed to be done for civilian operators. Because there is an issue, a conflict in the same procedure, most likely, if they hit that, it's going to be a double answer because it gives you 2 different rules. One's a step and one's in the additional data, all right? So I don't think they would hit that. Hopefully they realize that that's an issue. But anyway, the sergeant does an MV-104L. Failure to report on that MV-104L is a misdemeanor and is grounds for suspension, revocation of the MOS's license. Speaking of that, if your license is not renewed, it's not that it was suspended or revoked, you just fucking forgot to renew it. Is there anything you should do? What do you have to do? Why? Who cares? Because the fucking book says it, all right? That's the whole what if and why. Don't question why do we do this. Who fucking cares? As long as you know it and you press B or C and you get it right, okay? Yes, you tell your CO. Failure to report, what am I on? Ensure the uniform member's driver's license number is included on the MV-104L. Check the box next to the cop's name if the collision occurred in emergency operation. So that's the 3rd piece of paper Sergeant did. Next page. And that whole box explains to you the issue with the MV-104L and the MV-104N. It's a conflict, and that's the bottom line. All right, under the box, investigating supervisor. So look what it says in the little dotted box. Sarge, you will always do the patrol sergeant precinct of occurrence steps we just talked about, regardless if we have a death or seriously injured. If there's no DOA or seriously injured, then you are going to do all the steps we said and the following investigating supervisor steps as well. So you will be the IS if we have property damage or minor injury. Investigating supervisor, respond. Comply with 22103 if a person in custody is hurt from a department vehicle collision or anyone is hurt from a department vehicle pursuit or attempted car stop or attempted apprehension. Conduct canvass for witnesses in any video surveillance. Interview all involved, including witnesses. Next piece of paper. Personally prepare Part A of the collision report police department vehicle. If you happen to have a copy of that report, because I said that in the beginning, you should always get copies and have a folder. The only part you need to worry about for your exam, unless you're sitting in here, I know some of you are studying for captain, the only part most of you in here need to know about is Part A of that form, that is it. And the only time you will do it on test day is if you are the investigating supervisor. So that means property damage or minor injury. Sign and deliver the CRPDV to the desk officer precinct of occurrence. In the box regarding video surveillance, notify the squad if surveillance video is available but inaccessible due to technical difficulties. So when I see that line and I see technical difficulties, if I wasn't too sure, I would jump on who first? Taru. I would jump on Taru when I see technical difficulties. But no, it says go to the squad. But then look what it says. If the squad can't get it, then you go to Taru. Ensure the video is placed in a jewelry security envelope and vouchered as investigatory evidence. So that gets vouchered. The photos go in a jewelry security envelope as well, but do not get vouchered, all right? In pets, you're going to click MOS involved, and in the remarks, you're going to write, do not destroy without authorization of the CO of the Legal Bureau. And if you vouchered any video, you have to send a photocopy of the collision report police department vehicle to the CO of the risk assessment unit, and also give a copy of the voucher to the desk officer when you hand in the collision report police department vehicle. That box regarding video has some good testable shit in there. Jewelry security envelope, voucher, investigatory evidence, and send a copy to the CO of the risk assessment unit. So, if there's no video, are we sending a copy to the CO of the risk assessment unit? No, we are not, all right? Under the box. The sergeant, well, not the sergeant, the IS, I should say, is going to make a preliminary determination of the cause, and you're going to note the cause on two pieces of paper, the PAR and the collision report police department vehicle. That's the cause. Include actions of both the operator and recorder. If your preliminary investigation shows the operator is at fault, you note that just on the CRPDV, not on the PAR, and again, you note the actions or omitted actions by the recorder as well. So don't let them get you with cause and fault. Cause goes on two pieces of paper. Fault, basically we're saying our cop fucked up. They're at fault. Only goes on the report that the civilian will not get. And that's the collision report police department vehicle. The civilian is entitled to a copy of the PAR. So that's why we don't write the fault on a piece of paper they are going to get, all right? Desk officer duties. We're back to desk. Notify the patrol bureau again. Now you give them the rank, name, and command of the supervisor who prepared the CRPDV, which is the same person that is the investigating supervisor. Then you're going to notify Fleet Services Division, and you're going to get a police collision serial number. You're going to place the FSD number in a designated box on the CRPDV, and then you're going to write the FSD number on top of the PAR, prefaced by police collision serial number, because there's no box on the PAR for that. The little box on the right now recaps the desk officer calls and where the numbers go. Next page. Still on desk duties. After getting those three numbers, the PAR, the borough, and the FSD number, and without the final agency determination captions completed, the desk is going to fax the following three reports to the personal safety desk 24 hours a day. So both sides of the PAR, MV104L, CRPDV, and it says no cover sheet is necessary. Prior to faxing, ensure it's legible and accurate. Fax on the tour it happened, if possible. During business hours, and I love this, business hours are all over the place when it comes to the patrol guide. For this procedure, business hours are 07 by 1830. Confirm receipt by calling the personal safety desk. If you can't fax, leave copies for the relieving desk officer so they can do it on the next tour. And if you have an inoperative fax machine, use the fax at the closest department facility. They are so bent on fucking faxing. This has to be updated too. All we got to do is scan or whatever, upload an email, but it still says fax, all right? They go to all kinds of lengths to make sure this gets faxed. Go to another command, actually, it says. Check appropriate due copy required for box. You're going to write the vehicles command if they're not permanently assigned to your command. Send the department vehicle to the borough service station, even if there's no apparent damage, with a copy of the PAR and one set of photos attached, and do not put the vehicle in service until inspected at the service station. So we just got rid of another PAR, so now we're left with 2, and we just got rid of one set of photos, and now we're left with 1. Have the speedometer tested before use in speed enforcement. Notify speedometer testing station if it's going to be out a while. Attach a copy of the PAR, copy of the voucher if we got one, and photos to the CRPDV and forward to the precinct XO. Now we just got rid of the last set of photos and another PAR, so we're left with 1. And here it is, next bullet. Forward the original PAR goes to the traffic safety officer in the usual manner. Now here's the traffic safety officer duties, which comes out of 217.15. Obtain copies of reports and enter the following info into the intranet. Info from parts A and B, that's the CRPDV, all right? A and B within 72 hours from the time of collision, and info from part C within 30 days. Enter certain information from the PAR. If your private car insurance policy is surcharged, canceled, or not renewed unjustifiably as a result of a department vehicle collision, the member should notify their CO and contact the New York State Department of Financial Services. Vandalism to a department vehicle. You're on a job, you come out, there's a brick through the fucking window. We are not doing a PAR, all right? What do? It's a 49 addressed to FSD. We're going to send the vehicle to the borough service station with the 49. This doesn't say who does it, but a patrol supervisor duties from 202 pretty much says that's the one who would be doing that paperwork. All right, if we have a vehicle collision outside the city, we notify operations with the details, vehicle number, occupants, injuries, etc. Request response of the local cops for completion of the paperwork required by New York State. Department paperwork to be done and forwarded as per the procedure by uniform supervisor of the member. When possible, MOS concerned will take photo of damage to all vehicles involved using department cell phone, other department device, or any other means available. Next page. And we're going to end with that top of the procedure. We got to look for favorable witnesses because there may be a lawsuit involved. NYPD and New York City Law Department designee will pursue claims against private entities that are at fault. So carefully document details regarding the cause of the collision with witnesses favorable to New York City on department forms. Summonses will be issued to private vehicle operators if who? The patrol supervisor determines, not the IS. Now on test day, you could be the patrol supervisor and the IS, depending on the scenario. But when they talk about summonses, the person that authorizes it is the patrol supervisor. But if we have a DOA or seriously injured and a summons was issued, the CO duty captain will determine if it's justified and will have it voided if not. Summonses will not be issued to an operator of a department vehicle. 21706, you got to know that in and out. Cannot see how you're not going to see that on test day. Let's go to page 89. 21713, it's procedures in one. Preparing a PAR for somebody who walks into the command, amending a PAR, somebody walks in and says, hey, this is not right, something needs to be changed. And the other part of this procedure is giving the person a copy of a PAR. So the collision must have occurred within the last 30 days. So we're talking about somebody now who's looking for a copy of the PAR. After 30 days, we're going to give them a request form and instruct them to send it to New York State DMV in Albany. Provide the person with any information necessary to prepare the request form free of charge. To get a copy, you have to be an involved party. Who is considered involved party? Motorist, passenger, owner of damaged property. If a minor is involved, parent or guardian is considered. DOA, we have the executor administrator of the estate, next of kin or insurance beneficiary. And if it's a workers' comp claim, dependents, spouses, insurers, and attorneys are involved parties. So they're an involved party. They walk in, desk officer, interview, verify ID of the party requesting a copy of the PAR. Direct the person to who? The traffic safety officer or assign uniform MOS, traffic safety cop. Ask the requester to fill out the request for copy of collision record. Ask them when and where the collision occurred. Ask them to present a valid photo ID, driver's license, passport's okay. No photo ID, no PAR. If it's a lawyer requesting a copy, they must have a notarized letter signed by an involved party. Make 2 copies of the PAR and 1 copy of their ID. Ensure the copies of the PAR are correct, and you're going to write the name of the person receiving the PAR on the request form. Then you give the request form to the desk officer. What does he or she do? Sign the caption verifying proper completion. Back to the traffic safety cop. Give the requester a copy of the PAR and of the request form. Staple to the original request form the following: a copy of the PAR, photocopy of their ID with the PAR number written on the top right, and file chronologically on a daily basis. If it comes in via mail and they're looking for a copy, we're going to put the PAR in the stamped self-addressed envelope, and we said it earlier and it says it again: mail request without a copy of the valid photo ID will be returned. Amending a PAR without even looking. Are we mandated to amend a PAR? No, we are not. If we do, who is the one to do it? The one who originally filled out the PAR, right? So only done by the officer of record at their discretion. We may refuse to amend. If so, instruct them to make a report of motor vehicle accident, which is an MV 104, and have them send it to the Accident Records Bureau in Albany. But if the cop realizes, you know what, I did make a mistake and I need to fix it, all right, we're going to do another PAR, MV 104 AN, going to check the box at the top that says amended form, and that's it for that part. Here is where I think they would go, and they went to it in the past, all right? When we are mandated to fill out a PAR for somebody who walks in, 3 different scenarios. There was a commercial vehicle involved, and any vehicle involved was disabled to the point that it has to be towed, and the request is made within 5 days of the collision. Next scenario, there were injuries involved, and the request is made again within 5 days of the collision, or serious injuries or death involved. No time frame. Person walks in to the command, hey, I was involved in a vehicle collision 7 months ago. I was hospitalized. The cops never came. I need a report made. Are we going to make a report? Yes, we are. But you have to, then there's going to be another little trick to it. It all depends on what command that person walked into, and you're going to see how that works in a second. So you got to know the 3 times we are mandated to do a PAR. The first 2 involve 5 days. The last one, serious injury or DOA, no time frame. We will fill it out. So if the collision does involve any of the above, we'll make the PAR. Uniform member of the service only. Civilians cannot fill out PARs. Uniform member of the service will ask to see the car and speak to the people claiming to be party to the collision. Uniform member will make a note in the officer's notes section whether or not you saw the car or spoke to the participants. So, if the collision doesn't involve any of the above, then we give them the MV 104 and we tell them to fill it out and send it to Albany, because we're not doing a PAR MV 104 AN for them. But look what it says now about breaking the golden rule. Refer the complainant, not the complaint. In other words, send the walk-in to the precinct of occurrence for preparation of the PAR if it fits the above criteria, which even includes situations where a 61 maybe in order for leaving the scene. Prior exam, I forget which one it was. It may have even been the captain one that I wrote. Now, I can't even remember, but it doesn't make a difference. Person walks into the 120 because they work in the 120. Hey, I was involved in a vehicle collision 7 months ago, seriously injured, or somebody in the vehicle died. Should a PAR be made based on that scenario? Yes. Where did it happen? It happened in a 5-0. So you know what you're going to tell this person that's in front of you in Staten Island? You got to go all the way up to the ass end of the Bronx. That was the answer. Something along that line, all right? We never refer the complainant except for this scenario. Please do not let them get you if they go to that again on test day. Let's take our first break. 213. A little bit of 213. You look at page 1. This is a section you should not be spending a lot of time on, obviously, right? The average is, I don't know, 1.5 to 2 questions max. And it's not even like there's a procedure that has been on every exam. If you're looking at the history, the max is 1 procedure, 2 procedures on 2 exams. That's it. So there's really no rhyme or reason with 213. But let's go to page 3. Rapid mobilization, 213.03. Patrol supervisor, you call level 1 if you need to through radio. This is a somewhat recent change. If we're calling a mobilization for a missing person, it says first consult with the CO duty captain prior, unless there is some type of exigent circumstances. Also call the captain if you need higher than that level 1, because you can't call anything higher, right? So missing person, they want you to speak to the captain. But let's say you have a job where somebody was just kidnapped, missing person was kidnapped. There's no wait. You don't wait to speak to the captain. You call the mobilization, and then you fill the captain in, all right? Now it goes to activating supervisor. That's the way it goes in the guide. It starts out with patrol supervisor, then activating supervisor. That's going to be you as well. Tell operations in the borough why you call the level 1. Make sure you update them. Designate the mobilization point and tell radio what the mobilization point is and the route you want people to use. Make traffic posts for quick access. Get security for the mobilization point and the staging area. You will be the incident commander until you are outranked or this job is over. Be prepared to brief rank and MOS. If it goes to a level 2, 3, or 4, now the desk officer has duties. It says stage, inspect supply responders with a van, send them to the mobilization point. But transit, you have your own rules for mobilizations. Box on the right. The desk officer will notify the affected patrol cops of which transit bureau facility to respond to. Has them respond by train to the facility. The desk officer notifies the command post of personnel available at the facility. Supervisor at the command post communicates with transit bureau units that don't have citywide on their radios. Transit and housing rules. For a level 3, you will be staying on your property. Level 4, the job will send you wherever we need you. The bottom that talks about why 213 tends to be confusing, I don't need to cover that. It's just they're pointing something out there for you. But what the part I do want to cover is, I'm just going to recap it really quick. The answer is, as a cop, when you get mobilized, you are to do what? Are you going straight to the mobilization point, or are you 10-2ing? You're 10-2ing, because you have to get in a fucking van with 1 and 8, or you're the cop 1 and 7, all right? So there's a little conflict there, but the answer that we tell you to go with, if you hear mobilization, if they gave you those 2 choices, which I don't think they will, is you have to 10-2 first. That's what the bottom over there talks about. Go to the next page. So now we got mobilized and we're out of disorder, whatever the disorder is. Here are the duties now for the sergeant out of disorder. You will 10-2, form a squad of 8, ensure they're properly equipped and go to the mobilization point in a van. If we're doing a midnight on the first platoon, it says that 1 and 8 now becomes a squad of 2. Makes sense. We don't have enough people working midnights to send 1 and 8. Right and roll means the sergeant will make the roster while they're en route and then hand the roster in to the lieutenant. You may assist the incident commander as a command post staff position, which is operations, personnel, intel, or logistics. You will inspect the cops thoroughly at the mobilization point, instruct them as you are instructed, and hand in your roster. So all the instructions that you were given by the lieutenant are in the box on the right, and we'll talk about those right now. So what the lieutenant told you, you now are going to tell the cops. So the box on the right, tell them the importance of team concept in disorder control and the mission of the team. We are not allowed to take independent action. Follow direction and adhere to team concept. You're going to tell the cops the post, sector boundaries, nature of the disorder, location and phone number of the command post and arrest processing area. You're going to give them the identity of the incident commander, the mobile field force lieutenant, equipment information, proper radio frequency, and their mobile field force call sign. Tell the cops to use minimum force, don't punish, be professional. Tell them the importance of de-escalation tactics and crowd psychology that was added in last year. Tell the cops they are to tolerate verbal abuse by the crowd attempting to incite them. Maintain formation of 1 arm's length between adjoining MOS. Be in an on-guard stance when you're in a line or wedge formation. Watch the rooftops and high ground and maintain firearm discipline. Arrest team supervisor. You'll tell the cops don't wade into the crowd. Ensure AOs observe perps actions. And what is not allowed: to be complacent, break in formation, unnecessary conversation, and congregating. Don't assign less than 2 cops to rooftops, alleys, and rear yards. And don't assign plain clothes to rooftop, alley, and rear yards as well. So I told you in the regular class, a prior exam, they did something with the wording. I think they changed rear yard to the front yard. And I'm sure people second-guessed themselves when they saw front yard, because yard is in your head, right? Front yard, those rules don't kick in. Back to the left side. Direct parking only in designated areas. Have keys given to security detail if required. While en route, everybody in the van will have their radios tuned to the correct frequency, but only the sergeant and the van operator have the radios on. Here are the cop duties now when we get mobilized. It says 10-2 or go to the mobilization point as directed. We're telling you the answer will be 10-2. Don't drive through the disorder to get to the point. Put the radio on the proper channel when directed. Follow all the instructions listed above. That's the ones we just read in the box on the right. And then it says record the important ones. And they list the important ones. Sector post boundaries. Nature of disorder. Mission of the team. Equipment information. Location and phone number of the command post. Arrest processing area. Identity of the bosses and radio frequency and call signs. What's the uniform you're supposed to have? Sergeant and cops will have a helmet, baton, flashlight, disorder guidelines available on patrol while in the RMP. And you have to add rosters to the list for the sergeant. Box on the bottom talks about the whole 10-2 and thing again, all right? Next page. Team assignments. There's nothing tricky in there. I'm not going to waste time reading through these team assignments. Depending on what you're assigned, those are your duties there, right? Let's go to box on the bottom. Talk about the different types of mobilizations. There are 4 of them, all right? 1, 2, 3, and 4, obviously. 1 and 2 are your SRGs. Then when you go to 3 and 4, that means the shit is starting to hit the fan and involves a lot more people. So remember, you can only call a level 1, but when you call a level 1, you ought to make the mobilization point staging area large enough to accommodate what? A 3 or 4, right? So we call level 1. Who's coming? SRG from the affected patrol borough and 1 patrol supervisor from the affected transit district PSA of occurrence. So what does that mean? Let's just use an example. 3-4, Sergeant calls a level 1 mobilization somewhere in the 3-4. I'm not even going to make up streets. Who's coming? Manhattan SRG. Who else comes? Whatever transit district covers that area of the 3-4, one of their bosses is coming, as well as the PSA, that should be PSA 6, is coming. They're going just to say, hey, I hear a mobilization, what's going on? That's it. So one transit boss, one housing boss to stop in and just get updated why we have a mobilization. Level 2, you can't call it, but you need to know who would respond. SRG citywide, and also, same rule, one patrol supervisor from transit and the PSA. Level 3, who's coming? 1 and 8 from each precinct district PSA in the affected borough. And then level 4, you're going to get 1 and 8 from each precinct district PSA citywide. And we said it earlier, it's right there again on the bottom. First platoon, it's going to be 1 sergeant from 3 commands, which is picked by ops, and it will be 1 and 2, which is going to be the answer on that. 1 cop, 1 sergeant, 2 cops. Next page. Large-scale arrest processing. So this procedure kicks in. It tells you when we expect to lock up more than 20 people. The average number is supposed to be 5 collars per cop and 4 AOs per sergeant. So 1 sergeant, 20 perps on that. So this only kicks in when we're going to lock up more than 20. First actor, incident commander, you don't need to know that. That's not going to be in the rank of sergeant. You do need to know arrest supervisor, obviously. And basically, it's all arrest supervisor duties here. So they asked this in the past. You have like 7 sentences here. You can't get this fucking wrong, all right? Have each perp photoed with their arresting assigned officer before we get them in the wagon. Before. Why? Because when there's chaos and we load that wagon up with whatever, 50 savages that we just locked up, right? What's going to happen when we get to the arrest facility? The doors are going to open and we're going to forget which one of the savage belongs to me, unless it was very intimate and we got physical, all right? So we have to take a picture with them and then throw them in the van, or the wagon, I should say. Ensure the mass arrest pedigree label is affixed to the back of the photo with captions filled in. If the perp has property, ensure mass arrest pedigree labels get placed on each piece of property. Ensure that the city, state, and federal warrant checks are performed. You actually have to call the incident CO when you arrive at the station house and ask, what are we doing? Are we giving DATs, summonses, or onlines where they're going through the system, all right? The sergeant needs approval, it says, of the incident commander to DAT or summons. Assign other than the APO to do live scan. Review and sign all arrest paperwork. And your APO has 2 duties, and one of them is not going to be printing, obviously, all right? Your primary function is to return the arresting assigned officers to patrol, and you will assist in computer functions and ensure paperwork is properly prepared. But for this procedure, the APO will not fingerprint. Don't tie them up with doing fingerprints. All right, 213.10, off-duty mobilizations. This applies to uniform and civilian MOS. So there's 2 different scenarios. They're going to call a mobilization, and they're going to say utilize your primary mobilization point, or they're going to say you're going to go to your alternate mobilization point. So the primary, if they say the primary, the answer is easy. The primary mobilization point is what? It is your permanent command. Can't get that wrong, all right? But now, if they're going to implement the alternate mobilization points, it all depends where you leave. So who implements the alternate mobilization points? What's the nickname I call those people? The 3 wise men. Top 3 people. PC, First Dep, Chief of Department. If they come over the radio or whatever the message is and they say, hey, you have to go to your alternate mobilization point, now it depends on where you reside. If you reside, let's leave the city out for now. If you reside upstate, you're going to Van Cortlandt Park in the 5-0. If you reside out east somewhere, Nassau or Suffolk, It all depends if you're north or south of the LIE. North of the LIE, you're going to Flushing Meadow Park in the 110. South of the LIE, you're going where? Baisley Pond Park in the confines of the 113th. City residents, where are you going? What's your alternate mobilization point? It's still your permanent command if you live in the boroughs. Now we have this one little borough that has their own special rules, all right? Staten Island. What's the rule in Staten Island? If you live on Staten Island and work on Staten Island, where are you going? Your permanent command, right? If you live and work on Staten Island, go to your permanent command. If you live on Staten Island and work in the 9th precinct, where are you going? 122. You live on Staten Island, you work in the 52, where are you going? Live on Staten Island, work in the 52, where are you going? 122. All right, just remember those scenarios. And the only one I would trick you up is the Staten Island one. So who has to come in when this mobilization is called? RDO people and those scheduled for the next upcoming tour. So if it's called right now on a 4 to 12, who's coming in? Anybody who's RDO and everybody who's supposed to be coming in at 23:15, you're going to work now, all right? What about the day tour people? Just wait till tomorrow morning and come to work for your regular day tour. So if your next tour doesn't start within the next 8 hours, don't respond immediately. Just come in for your next scheduled tour as usual. Next page. Everybody that comes in is going to go on a roster as 1 and 8 in 3 different categories. On duty, members of patrol, housing, transit get assigned to operational control of their bureau. Next platoon, so that would be the midnight people we just used as an example. They will be utilized as per the needs of their permanent command. And then RDO people get organized into mobile field forces and deployed as rapid response units by their borough. Next, actor. Well, actually, it's the first actor, really. Ranking member at the mobilization point. So when you talk about this actor, the ranking member at the mobilization point, how many people are we talking about? 3. That's it, right? It's one of those sergeants in the park, in the 5-0, in the 110 or the 113. That's who we're talking about here. There's another actor in the book that is the ranking member at the command, but it says CO, ranking member at the command. They're not going to make you that person. That's really meant for the CO. You're going to be this one that's out at the mobilization point, one of 3 people. So you're going to make a command post. You're going to make traffic post along the route to the point. You're going to make security post. You're going to set up parking for the responders, close the street if you have to, and give security. Arrange transportation of mobilized people to their commands through the borough, and you notify who? Operations of the numbers you got by rank, how many showed up, and how many you shuttled to commands. You notify operations, not the borough, if you are the boss at the mobilization point. All right? Let's go to page 9. Apprehension plan. Starting with the box on the right, this kicks in. It says when we have a big job, such as, God forbid, a cop is shot, or we got multiple homicides, the scene is still fresh, only a captain can activate the apprehension plan, so you as a sergeant will never do it. All right, it's activated, the cops, what do? Notify Central when you're 84, request EMS and the patrol sergeant, render aid, then attempt to apprehend, secure the crime scene, transmit a description with direction of flight, detain civilian witnesses. Patrol supervisor duties. Respond to the scene, call level 1. Notify duty captain, it says by phone if possible. Evaluate the crime scene and expand if necessary. Assign uniformed members to inner and outer perimeters. Have injured cops taken to the hospital, even if they're going for trauma, but follow the arrow to the box on the right. It says the patrol sergeant is to stage EMS at or near the scene to treat cops that have minor injuries or civilian witnesses so that a detective or a boss can debrief them when possible before they go to the hospital. Each injured cop gets their own uniformed member of the service escort using uninvolved UMOS. UMOS not directly involved in the firearm discharge has to remain to help the investigation. The sergeant will get a synopsis of what happened and detain witnesses for detectives, establish firearms control if necessary, retransmit a description and direction of flight, establish a command post, request the squad, coordinate and expand the search if necessary, assign cops to canvass the area for license plates, and the cops will give that information to the TARU Detective Bureau command post, assign cops to record evidence that's recovered, get the place, time, and name of who recovered it. Detective Bureau will take over the step when they get set up. Assign cops to record identity of responders, and the cops will give that to the command post later on. And then in the box, we talk about the command post there. Sergeant will use an SRG command post vehicle and leave room for the TARU command post. Back to the left side. Don't worry about the captain. That's the captain duty there. Last bullet under the patrol sergeant. Establish a press area if appropriate. Desk officer duties. Doesn't have much to do in here. Has very little to do with beyond the typical notifications. Borough operations. So we all know the acronym for the standard desk officer notifications that we've been saying since lesson 1. What is it? COP. CO duty captain, ops, and a patrol bureau. This one right here, the C, is a little different now. So you still got borough and ops, but then it says CO and predetermined personnel as per the command plan, even if they're off duty. So the desk officer has duties, but who notified the desk officer in this procedure? Nobody did. How did he get notified? I don't know. Does it really matter? No, it doesn't. But the reason I'm saying it is I don't want you to fall for the sergeant notifying the desk officer. It never directs anybody to notify the desk officer, but the desk officer does have 2 or 3 duties right there on the bottom of page 9. Go to, still on this procedure, next page. Regarding the perimeters, inner perimeter will be the crime scene and its immediate vicinity, includes areas where you got to wear a heavy vest. Outer perimeter depends on the incident, but a 4-block area is considered reasonably initially, and then we bring you back to week 1. Operator duties says you are to respond to serious radio runs regardless of boundaries within how many blocks? 5 blocks, all right? Don't let garbage cans get taken away by sanitation. Watch the mailboxes and escape routes. You're going to assign cops at building lobbies near the crime scene. Cops on the outer perimeter or in building lobbies should interview and possibly identify people leaving the area and give that info to the TARU DB command post. Box on the right regarding the crime scene itself. Initially, very large. If the scene is one room of a private house, then the whole house should be the initial crime scene. Eventually, it says, it will be reduced in size, but never by you. That's the Detective Bureau duty captain. And then this last line was actually an answer on a prior exam. If the Detective Bureau duty captain releases the crime scene while it's still dark out, we got to call ESU back when the sun comes up to do a daylight search. And then regarding license plates, have cops get license plate numbers, state, make, model, location, time observed of the cars in the area, taking note of warm engines. All right, next procedure, 213.13. Emergency plan A, B, and C can only be activated by the chief of transportation or higher. If during the tour a traffic problem was observed, the cop is supposed to notify dispatcher via radio or landline and take corrective action. So we have 3 different plans. Not hard to remember what they are, right? A is they have a little word to remember: abdominal snowman, hazardous road conditions due to snow, ice, freezing rain. B, Bermuda, hurricanes, whatever you want to, boats, however you want to remember it. Dangerous street conditions due to hurricane storms or floods. Almost probably had a activation of Plan B today with all the rain in the boroughs. Plan C for cars, traffic congestion and other conditions due to heavy traffic. So nobody in the room can activate any of these plans. But when it gets activated, a finance is going to come over saying it's activated. Desk officer, you got duties. Notify the CO and other units in the same building. Make assignments by prioritized traffic post list kept at the desk for the plan or as conditions warrant. During school hours, give priority to school crossings. So they mentioned school hours in here 2 times. Just be careful with that they, in the stem of the question, they may say like it's Monday, 8:30 in the morning, we have traffic plan, whatever, in effect, right outside of PS 123. They may not say fucking school is open, is what I'm trying to say. They may give you a scenario where you have to assume, based on everything they told you in the question, it's school hours. So during school hours, the desk gives priority to school crossing. Assign MOS to strategic locations and have MOS periodically report prevalent conditions if needed. Assign MOS to survey parkways, expressways, and to aid stranded motorists. Direct those on emergency plan assignment and patrol to submit reports on occurrences, actions taken, and recommendations, and file those reports in a log at the desk. Next page, you're still on desk officer duties. Notify the patrol borough initially, so definitely one call to the borough is going, and then hourly thereafter of the following: traffic, detours, intersections covered, serious incidents, manpower needed, equipment required. The borough then notifies operations. We tell you, you really don't need to know that, but we threw that out there because there's going to be a time when you, as the desk officer, has to notify operations. And we're going to talk about that in a second. Direct department property be safeguarded against adverse weather conditions. Maintain a special log at the desk to record emergency plan incidents with the following captions. You don't need to know the captions. They have it there for you, but I wouldn't be concerned with that. Here, I would pay attention to this. The desk will notify operations when you have person in need of temporary shelter or emergency transportation. Then it says, etc. They're going to have to use one of those two for that to kick in that call to operations. Ascertain assignments are made in accordance with the plan or as appropriate to conditions. Survey conditions within the command and record incidents and situations requiring further attention. Direct the patrol sergeant to survey the assigned area and report observations and recommendations. Cop duties. Contact the station house for possible reassignment when you learn about a plan being activated. If assigned to traffic duty or school crossing, remain on post until completion. Continue patrol, it says, unless you're on special assignment. Keep the traffic moving. Inform people to safeguard property. Visit construction sites. Have them secure cranes, scaffolding. For downed utility wires, safeguard and notify the utility company concerned and ESU, and report the following to the desk officer: unusual hazardous conditions, serious traffic congestion, slippery grades, dangerous bridge conditions requiring attention of other agencies. Help stranded motorists when assigned to a parkway or expressway. So another thing with this procedure, like the other one, it mentions the patrol sergeant here, but there is no steps for the patrol sergeant. All it says is for the desk officer to direct the patrol sergeant to survey the assigned area, blah, blah, blah. But there's really nothing else for the patrol sergeant to do. All right, 213.16, relocation of vehicles during special events. So whatever the event is, every year we have the West Indian Day Parade, Thanksgiving Day Parade. We got to clear Fifth Avenue or Eastern Parkway. We set up no parking details. That's what this is all about. Assigned supervisor. So the CO is going to assign a boss to coordinate the no parking detail. Assigned supervisor. You will have no parking signs posted at least 2 days prior and ensure they are removed after the event is over. Now the next line throws in one duty for the patrol supervisor. On each subsequent tour, you have to survey and ensure the signs stay up. Missing or damaged signs are to be replaced as necessary. Do not let them stick that duty to the assigned supervisor. And if you think about it, in reality, that can't be. You're posting these signs 2 days prior to the event, and then somebody's checking them every tour. It can't be you who posted it, because that means you're never going home. So don't let them, if you think about it, they can't get you. But if you read it fast, because it sounds correct, check every tour and replace, but it belongs to the patrol supervisor. Have cars towed away from the affected area. Have a uniformed member of service escort each tow. Ensure each relocated vehicle gets a notice of relocation sticker. Ensure tow operators have enough of these stickers. We can tow a handicap or special DOT plate. We just got to relocate as close as we can. And we try to place every car we towed in a legal spot. No double parking. Don't place it in front of a hydrant, in a bus stop, or in a crosswalk. Next page. Now we're on the cop duties. Escort the tow operator while we're relocating the vehicles. You're going to put the notice of relocation sticker on the car. Prepare vehicle relocation report and give a copy to the boss. Verify that doors to all vehicles are locked. Back to the assigned supervisor. Verify the report the cop prepared for accuracy and completeness. Those reports will get maintained on a clipboard at the desk for 45 days and then discarded. You're going to make an entry in TOPIS. That's the tow pound info system via Finest. You'll also have to give a list to the field command post so detailed cops can find out over the radio whose car got towed where. Then you will have signs titled Vehicle Relocation Notice posted in the affected area telling car owners to contact the local precinct. And they stay up for 48 hours. And the last bullet is just confer with the precinct CO regarding a critique. That little recap box compares the no parking sign and the vehicle relocation notice sign. All right, next procedure. So there's no history on 21320 because this was never around before. Anything new, I would definitely pay attention to, all right? So we're going to go through this one, 21320. It's not that hard, but it's new. So this is titled First Amendment Protest. This is for non-violent, lawful assembly exercising freedom of speech to petition the government for a redress of grievances. If we have a scheduled event, it says, when the cop becomes aware of a scheduled protest event, notify 2 people, the precinct CO, breaking a chain of command, and the citywide event planning and coordination section. The second bullet, the CO will do whatever he does. Don't worry about that. That's for a scheduled event when a cop finds out this is going to happen next week. Now, you're driving around your sector or your foot post and you walk into a protest that we knew nothing about. Spontaneous event now. Now the cop notifies the patrol supervisor and it tells the cop you will be the incident commander until relieved by a ranking member. Notify radio, request resources, stage them an appropriate distance away, pending arrival of a boss unless circumstances necessitate immediate police response. Patrol sergeant duties. Respond, take command of all police operations until relieved by higher authority. Notify the desk officer of available information, including the location, type, purpose of activity, size, demeanor of the group, plan routes, other pertinent information. Next page. Now we're on desk officer duties. Notify and relay the above information you got from the patrol sergeant to the following. Standard 3 people. CO, operations, and the overhead command, which is also the borough. Uniform member assigned to the event, whether it's spontaneous or scheduled, these are the same duties for the cops, so they kind of make it easier, right? The only thing that changes is when you have a scheduled or unscheduled event is who the cop notifies. But his duties or her duties are the same. So respond as directed and follow instructions of the incident commander. If violent behavior or unlawful activity, it says comply with 213.05, duties at an unusual disorder, which we covered earlier, as necessary. Violent behavior is defined as use of physical force or tangible objects to hurt people, damage property, cause a fire, or the incitement or encouragement of such behavior. It tells us we can wear a helmet at our own discretion if there's reasonable belief safety is endangered or conditions warrant. Ensure First Amendment rights to free expression are balanced with the need to maintain public safety. Attempt de-escalation with violent subjects if feasible, and then remain apprised of changing conditions. Now the rest, barriers and the 1, 2, 3 bold bullets there underneath, don't cross it out. There's an actor that belongs there, but not for your test. So if you're in here studying lieutenant captain, don't cross it out. That's what I should have started with, all right? But for your sergeant, you don't need to worry about the whole barrier and the following bullets. But you do have to look at the additional data on the bottom. We frequently exercise discretion at First Amendment activities, but this procedure does not limit our authority to effect arrest or take other enforcement action for unlawful acts, particularly if such unlawful acts are likely to cause public unrest or prevent law enforcement from maintaining the peace. And it says don't activate a body-worn camera at a demo unless mandatory as per the list in 212.123. 212.123 is the procedure. Yes, body-worn camera. That procedure there, remember there was a list of when you have to activate your body-worn camera. Top of the next page. According to the Handshoe Consent Decree, we don't investigate political activity without express written approval of the Deputy Commissioner of Intel and Counterterrorism as per 212.72. The Legal Observer Program. This is what I would pay attention to, all right? Besides it being a new procedure, when we start giving people permission to enter certain lines, all right? So the Legal Observer Program is a comprehensive system of legal support coordinated by the National Lawyers Guild and the New York Civil Liberties Union. This allows properly ID'd legal observers free access through police lines at any First Amendment activity. They generally wear bright green hats or blue hats and blue vests. We are to extend every courtesy and cooperation to them, and they shall be permitted to remain in any area or observe any police activity, subject only to restrictions necessitated by personal safety factors as determined by the incident commander. And the next bullet talks about a duty that you really don't need to know about because you're not going to be the incident commander. Let's go now to next page, 214. So if you look at the chart, your average 3 to 4 questions, all right? Let's go, that's page 15. Let's start with, on page 16, homeless contact guidelines. Now this changed, and the city is full of homeless people. Doesn't mean they're going to write a question? No. But again, if I'm studying, I'm going to know this procedure, right? Homeless contact guidelines. Start with the banner. This was an answer on a prior exam. If we have a homeless person who is apparently physically and mentally sound but refuses services, they are free to leave or remain at the location. They have a definition of what's considered a contact. Any interaction between a UMOS and a homeless individual when the homeless is transported to a shelter, that's a contact. Arrested or summoned, that's a contact. Treated as an aided, treated as an EDP. Requested to leave private property or publicly owned property not usually open to the public or not open to the public at the time of the encounter. All of those are considered contacts with a homeless person. All right, here we go with the cops. Interview and determine a need for medical, psych, shelter, or other aid. follow 21601 aideds if they're an aided, or maybe we're going to EDP them. If they're intox and lead you to believe they're at risk of serious injury to themselves or others, it says EDP them. If they're a client of the Department of Homeless Services or an other agency, contact the agency to respond if available. Advise the homeless of all available services. Refusal after repeated encounters, we refer them to DHS. If they request or agree to a shelter, where are we taking them? We're taking them to the 24-hour intake shelter or drop-in center. When we transport them, we have to follow 20203, which is transporting non-MOS in RMP. All male homeless are all male homeless that are in Queens get transported to the 30th Street Men's Shelter in Manhattan. And radio code. I tell you, they usually ask a radio code question, and it's going to come from the patrol guide. Here's a radio code that came out of this procedure. You're going to give back a 97S when transporting homeless to a shelter for any reason. 97S. Next page. What paperwork we doing? We're going to make an aided in forms unless we collar or summons them. And in the details, we're going to write, not sick or injured. We're going to write they are homeless. Also say if they requested or you offered and they refused or accepted any type of services. If it's a result of outreach efforts, select other, explain in the details and in details box, and include circumstances of the contact in the details of the aided. If they violate the law, including repeated minor violations, it says take appropriate enforcement action. And I would definitely highlight this. I didn't say highlight any time tonight. I should have, but I fucked up, all right? So, not that I fucked up. I mean, if you're looking at my book, look, I almost highlight everything. Hi, people at home, all right? But this, it's bold, so I shouldn't even have to say highlight. Request the patrol sergeant to all arrest situations. And it does not say request them when you're going to give them a summons. Any questions regarding enforcement action or removing them to a shelter, we can contact the Legal Bureau attorneys. They are available Monday through Friday. I love these times, 07 by 22:30. Outside of that time, so 22:31 to 06:59, then we have to go through operations to get the attorney that is on call. Activity log entry will be made for all homeless individual contacts. Desk officer, review the aided, ensure accuracy, completeness. If it's not accurate or complete, it says return to the cop to fix. Otherwise, if it's good, approve it. When we have a cold weather emergency declared by DOH, what makes a cold weather emergency? The temp reaches or fall below 32 degrees. It gives us direction. UMOS. Be alert always for homeless, but particularly between 16 and 0800 for homeless with no means of shelter from elements. Ascertain if the homeless have available means of shelter. If not, and they consent, transport them like we saw on the prior page. If they have no means and they refuse, request the patrol supervisor to respond. Patrol sergeant, make every effort to encourage. If they still refuse services and either they're mentally ill or intox, it says you would either EDP or make them an aided case. Then you got 2 lines out of additional data. And remember, at this point, you're probably not reading the patrol guide, and I don't blame you. But I know I said it 100 times. You gotta look at the additional data because they go to the end of a procedure because they know you guys and girls, or they think you guys and girls stop reading when you finish whatever actor you're on, all right? But we give you the stuff in the crams as well. So additional data says all precincts, PSAs, transit districts will ensure that outreach cards, which are prepared by New York City DHS and contain contact info for obtaining shelter, are made available to their personnel. Homeless Outreach Unit provides info and training regarding services available, as well as strategies and tactics for interacting with homeless individuals. And this unit is staffed and operational 24/7. All right, let's take our last break, and then we're going to go into some more 214, 215, and 216. Huh. 214.11. Obscenity and offensive material enforcement. So UMOS, it says when you get called to a location or you observe, it says look at the obscene material. Now what does look mean? With kind of what I just said. Look at the box on the left there. Means you observed publicly displayed sexually explicit material. Means you observed it on your own, or we get a complaint of publicly displayed sexually explicit material. So what do? Notify the patrol supervisor, and that is it. It says do nothing else. It doesn't even tell the cop to make an activity log entry. Then it tells the patrol sergeant to take a good look at the obscene material. What's a good look? Is it easily visible or available without admission? Does it show any sexual conduct? Are people naked, sex acts going on, fettered, bound, restrained, flagellation, all this other funky, crazy shit, all right? Flagellation. I had to just look it up when I started teaching years ago because I didn't know what it was. All right, some of you may know because you like it. So basically, it's getting whipped and shit like that, okay? Flagellation. Then it tells the sergeant in the second bullet to make an activity log entry, and it's going to be a detailed activity log entry. I don't think you need to know what's going to go in there. Just know that he's required to make one, or she is. Do not take any action other than you making that activity log entry, and you are to consult with the Legal Bureau upon completion of the investigation. And the box under the box says, we will not collar for Penal Law 235, which is obscenity, without approval of the Legal Bureau, but we may effect a collar for Penal Law 245.11, which is public display of offensive sexual material under appropriate circumstances. Next up, unlawful eviction. So this applies to residential premise only, not commercial, all right? Dwelling unit definition, any building or portion of used as a home, residence, or sleeping place. It does not include hospitals, convents, monasteries, or NYCHA. So test day unlawful evictions cannot take place in NYCHA. It does include privately owned hotels, including those taking government funding. So what is considered legitimate occupancy, which actually prevents or protects a tenant from being unlawfully evicted? They occupy a dwelling unit pursuant to a lease, period. You are protected. No time frame for that. You are there 2 days pursuant to a lease. You cannot be unlawfully evicted. You are lawfully occupying for 30 consecutive days or more. No mention of a lease there. Or you are staying in a hotel SRO and you request a lease. A verbal request is good enough. Sublet tenants are protected as well from being unlawfully evicted. How can a landlord commit unlawful eviction? Use or threaten force, violence, or course of conduct that interferes with an occupant's comfort, repose, peace, and quiet. Deny, interrupt, or discontinue essential service like heat, water, electricity. And in the STAR, this is a stupid thing they did before, right, on a prior exam. So it says, if the patrol guide says, if you turn off the water, period, that's considered unlawful eviction. On a prior exam, they had a landlord turn off just the hot water. So meaning the tenant still had cold water, and that wasn't considered unlawful eviction. I think that's kind of cheesy, but that was the answer on a prior exam, all right? So for it to be an unlawful eviction, the landlord has to cut the water off completely. No hot and no cold. Or you turn off the electricity, you remove the tenant's possessions, remove, disable, change the entrance door or lock, or failing to take reasonable and necessary action to restore occupancy if any of the above occur. So those are all the different ways a landlord can commit an unlawful eviction. Next page. Legal Bureau Bulletin 49 adds some more info into this. Also can be unlawful eviction because if the owner allows other serious building or health code violations to exist. The Legal Bureau Bulletin also says that the above acts count if done for the purpose of eviction. And the example is a great one. The landlord doesn't want to pay the oil bill. He failed to provide heat, but not for the purpose of eviction. So if he doesn't pay the bill on purpose, so the tenant can't get heat, that's considered unlawful eviction. What type of enforcement action do we take at an unlawful eviction? Summons if the victim is allowed to re-enter and the violator is properly ID'd. Even if services like the heat are not turned back on, that's still a summons. When do we collar? It says arrest the violator if we cannot identify who it is, because then you can't give a summons, or they refuse or physically block re-entry. So if you go to a job and the landlord changed the lock and turned off the heat, he committed two different violations. If he says, you know what, I'm going to turn the heat back on, but I'm not changing the lock, what enforcement action do we take? That's a collar, all right? Let's say he says, you know what, all right, I'll change the lock back so he can use his key, but I'm not turning the fucking hot water on because he didn't pay me 6 months rent. What do we do now? Summons, all right? Please understand when we collar and when we summons. It's not that hard to remember when we have to make the collar, so they shouldn't get you on that. So now we're going to talk about the actual summons. It will be a separate summons for each offense. If we have numerous apartments that are affected, it will be numerous summonses. It's going to be a summons, New York City Admin Code summons or New York State Real Property Actions and Proceeding Law. Anywhere except Staten Island, so here we go with Staten Island rules, the summons will be returnable to SAP part of Manhattan Criminal Court. So every borough, the summons is going back to Manhattan Criminal Court except for Staten Island. What's the return date? It's going to be on a weekday, obviously, at least 21 days out from when the summons is issued. Now, if it's Manhattan or the Bronx, it has to be on a Tuesday. Brooklyn or Queens, it has to be on a Thursday. And if it's in Staten Island, the summons is going to Staten Island Criminal Court. Again, the return date is at least 21 days, and it will be the first Wednesday of the month. The cop will complete the complaint information section on the front of the summons with specific details of the violation. If it's in your presence, you will sign the CI section. If not, ensure crime was committed and complainant signed section. If the complainant refuses, you may sign based on information and belief if the information is complete. Since the complainant is a civilian, the cop has to cross out complainants and complaint and write in officers and officer on the front of the summons, and then also cross out I personally observed above the complainant's name. With a civilian complainant, their name, address, and phone number go on the bottom rear of the original summons. Under the complainant's full name printed, rank, full signature of the complainant, and date affirmed. Personally serve the violator with the criminal court pink copy of the summons. If we're collaring because they have no ID or they refused to allow re-entry, it's only an online. There are 3 no's, if you remember, when we covered 214 in the regular class. 3 no's when it comes to collaring and unlawful eviction. Right there, no 61, no fingerprints, and the other one's the second line down. No DAT. The violator is going to criminal court for prompt arraignment. If we have a victim who's unable to get temporary housing, we refer them to New York City Department of Homeless Services. All right, let's go, because there's so much stuff and never enough time. Let's look at, let's get this new, where is this new procedure? Actually, let's go to page 30, quality of life, 311. Another newsworthy issue in New York City, besides the homeless, quality of life. So we start out with a definition. Chronic 311 condition is what? 5 or more service requests in 28 days for the same specified condition at a location. TSOP, you will record quality of life service requests received via telephone in the telephone dispatch log. Because remember, the TSOP maintains what? Highway fort. This is going back to 202. Highway condition record. The F is for frequent telephone inquiries. The O, outgoing tow call. The R, roll call, but what about the roll call? Dupe copy. And then the T is this, and remember I told you on a prior exam, they substituted telephone record and telephone dispatch log for what the TS maintains. I mean, that was another ground ball test question, all right? So record the call in the telephone dispatch log. Inform the caller to call 311 directly in the future, and if the job requires referral to another agency, tell them to call 311 right now. Confer with the desk officer to reconcile duplicates in the 311 system. Have quality of life jobs in 311 or TS requiring investigation dispatched as a command assignment. Enter final dispositions of calls received via the switchboard, again in your telephone dispatch log. All right, the cops handling this 311 call. Tell radio you are 1061 is the radio code. Give the location. Respond expeditiously, except if you're on emergency. Promptly notify radio upon completion. Notify the desk officer of dispositions and inform the desk officer of jobs not completed by the end of tour. Next page, patrol sergeant. One duty. Monitor performance of members assigned to quality of life service requests and ensure appropriate response. Next actor, desk officer platoon commander. Obviously, it's going to be desk officer for you. Ensure jobs are dispatched expeditiously and that appropriate action is taken. Monitor for improperly routed to the command and reassigned to appropriate precinct or bureau command through 311. Monitor, this one I would highlight. I find it very, very alarming. Monitor and give special attention to 311 jobs that have media files attached. So if the person goes out of their way to send us a fucking picture, we got to make sure we handle that, all right? Manually refresh the 311 system at least every hour, checking for jobs requiring attention. Command log entry at the start and end of tour indicating the number of pending assignments. Skip that box for now. We'll come back to it. Under the box. Print a copy of each job assigned during the platoon and give to assigned sector. Ensure dispose are properly recorded in 311 or on your telephone dispatch log as applicable. Dispatch jobs as resources become available, except jobs deferred to special units like the SOL, and any job with 5 or more calls in 8 hours because they require an immediate response. I would be careful of that, all right? You have time frames, you have a number of 2 different numbers in one bullet. Determine if the job can be handled during the tour or requires deferral to special units or another command or even another city agency. Indicate all deferrals in the 311 system or in the telephone record as appropriate. Now they threw in telephone record there. Deferred job gets interim disposed, either deferred or open as appropriate. Accept assignments not completed on the previous tour and prioritize for assignment to the next available unit. Next actor, platoon specific, second platoon desk officer. And this is one of the times that goes against what I told you in the beginning. Remember when you see something for the previous 24 hours or something like that? The answer should be first platoon desk officer. Here is the one exception to it. So the second platoon desk officer is going to review the 311 system at 0800 for the last 24 hours to account for all jobs and ensure dispos are properly assigned. Initiate investigation to resolve unmarked dispos and take corrective action as necessary. NCO sergeant is now in this procedure. Assist the SOL in identifying conditions requiring a complex or sustained response. Ensure NCOs are aware of the list of locations of 311 service requests in their sector. Next actor, training sergeant. You got a lot of actors in here, a lot of meat to test you on, all right? Conduct command level training on quality of life matters, including instruction on operation of the 311 system when necessary and as directed by competent authority. Additional data now. Command concern handles complaints of improper parking permit use. They will get towed, summons, etc. Give disposition to traffic management center. Go up in the middle of the page to the other box that mentions additional data. And look what it says. There is no actor assigned. So that means you're responsible for it. Who does it? We don't know, but it has to be done, whatever it says. Refer conditions not within the department's purview to the appropriate city agency. Access 311 system on the application on the department smartphone or 311 website from any department desktop. Service request should not be created anonymously. Find the appropriate heading, fill in the captions with the pertinent information and your name, department email address, smartphone number, or the number to the TS. Next page. Few bullets and we're done with that procedure. OMAP is our liaison to New York City 311 system. Authorized MOS. You ought to sign on and sign off when you're unable to safeguard, even for a brief period. That goes with any department computer. Anytime you leave that computer terminal, you got to sign off, because if you don't, you're responsible for whatever happens while you're still logged in. If we got problems with computer equipment or department network issues, we notify ITB service desk 24/7. Problems with system failure or program malfunction, get referred to New York City Do It. Remember, the Do It is the ITB of all New York City. ITB is our computer people, but Do It is the computer people for all of New York City. Those calls go into telephone record, and MOS doing oversight analysis or investigation on department computer, use department computer systems as appropriate. All right, let's skip to, we're going to go into 215 for a few. You have your chart on 34. Go to page 37. Lost child. It's a pretty easy procedure, but they made it hard on a prior exam. So lost child. So basically, you're on a foot post or in a sector car, and you come across a kid who is lost, all right? What do? We have it numbered here, the first two steps. What they did on a prior exam is they asked you, what is the first thing the cop should do? So A, B, C, and D were all correct duties for the cop, which makes it a very hard question, because you ought to know what's the first thing you should do. And the way it's worded, if I'm handling this kid who is lost, I'm not going to do the first thing the job wants me to do. I would probably jump to step 2 before I did step 1. And that's why they ask, what's the first thing you do? So, first thing according to the book, you will notify the desk officer and radio. Second step, make a brief inquiry in the vicinity of the place where you found the kid. Then you will bring the child to the command if a relative is not located. Only relative here. Prepare ADA report. One other thing I want to mention. When we talk about juveniles in 215, there are ages. This procedure, no age mentioned at all. So they can't hit you with the age if they're hitting you with 21502. Desk officer duties. You will call missing person squad with a description. Subsequently notify missing person if the child is moved to another location. Complete captions on the ADA report and process. Assign a female or other available UMOS if available to watch the child in the command when necessary. Notify your youth coordination officer. If the child is not claimed in a reasonable time, notify ACS to send a rep for transport to the shelter. If the ACS cannot transport, assign a female or other available uniformed member to escort the child to the shelter. In cases that could involve abuse, neglect, maltreatment, or abandonment, you're going to prepare a SCAM report. We're going to talk about that in the next procedure. That's a report of suspected child abuse and maltreatment. You will notify the squad if we have a child who is 11 years old or older. You notify special VICs if we have a child who is under 11 years old. And you also notify special VICs, regardless of the age, of their age, if there's an allegation of any sex crime. Next page. I think this procedure right here is probably one of the most important procedures in 215, because this is where we actually take a kid out of somebody's house. So suspected child abuse, maltreatment. We respond. The cops will call the patrol sergeant. Always. Gotta know when you as a cop can remove a kid without a boss there, right? Look what it says. Please know this word for word. The cop can take the child before the boss arrives if two things have to be met. Imminent danger, and you have parental or guardian consent. On test day, you're probably not going to have the consent. So then it's going to fall into the boss's lap. Wait for the boss if you don't have consent. Patrol sergeant, you will direct removal without parental consent if there is reasonable cause to believe that continued presence in the home is imminently dangerous. So the same factor the cop had to have met, right? But also, there is no time to get a court order. So imminent danger, no time to get a court order. The sergeant can rip the kid out of the house, all right? And what they did on a prior exam is they had the imminent danger present, and they told you somehow in the story that it was like on a late tour, on a weekend, and you had to assume there was no time to get a court order because court was closed because it was on a midnight and on a weekend. All right, back to the cop duties. Arrest if you have probable cause, and obviously there'll be no DAT. Advise the non-abusing parent or guardian of services and give the phone number for Safe Horizon for the child. Look for indicators of other DV in the house, and if you find other DV, it's going to be a separate 61. Then you're going to prepare possibly 6 pieces of paper, which we're going to talk about on the next page. Remove the child to the command or CAC. Remain at CAC until picked up by a relative, friend, or ACS. If the child needs medical attention, obviously we have to take them to the hospital. Patrol supervisor. Here's one piece of paper. You're going to direct that the notice of temporary removal of child and right to hearing is served or affixed. The cop prepares the notice. Back to the cop now. You're going to notify New York State Child Abuse Maltreatment Register, which is also known as the State Central Registry. If New York State refuses the case, you are going to write the time and name in the telephone record, and you still fill out the paperwork. If they take the case, you're going to write the registry number on the SCAM report in the state registry number box. Who else do you notify? ACS, Borough Field Office, 9 to 5, or their Emergency Children's Services if it's after hours. And who else do you notify? ACS Incident Response Team Coordinator. Now we are on desk officer duties. Secure the shelter for the child. Comply with 21501. Tell parent or guardian to call ACS or ACS Emergency Children's Services after hours. Never give them the location of the child, and we never return the kid to the home if the child is a victim of a crime or abused by a parent or guardian. And then it says there are other agents with removal powers, and if they decide on removal, we don't override them. So if ACS calls us to a job, hey, we want you to come. There's actually a procedure with this because we hear there's guns in the house. They go there, there's no guns, but if they tell us they're going there to remove a kid, that's it. We don't get in the way. They remove a kid. If we're going to a house to remove a kid and ACS is with us and they say, no, you shouldn't, we're removing a kid. They don't tell us what to do and we don't tell them what to do. Next page. Now we're going to talk about the paperwork involved. There are 6 pieces of paper which possibly will get done for this type of job. DIR, complaint report, report of suspected child abuse or maltreatment, aided report, notice of temporary removal of child and right to hearing, and then we have the affidavit of service. If we're just reporting and we're not taking a kid out of the house, it's only 3 pieces of paper. If we are taking a kid out of the house, it's 6 pieces of paper. You remember I gave you an acronym for the 6 pieces of paper in the regular class. Anybody remember it? NARC-DA. If you don't remember it, it's on the app as well. Make it fit to these 6 pieces of paper. NARC-DA, all right? So we do a 61, always. Removal or not, we're doing a 61. Detective name, case, or log number goes in the notifications to caption on the rear of the 61 worksheet. And we already said it, we will do a separate 61 if we find any DV in the house or other family offenses such as an existing order of protection. Second piece of paper, the report of suspected child abuse or maltreatment. Always done, removing a kid or not, all right? The desk officer reviews it, then forwards it in a sealed envelope in the next department mail. And be careful of the first bullet. I never really tell you to be concerned with what copies going where, but this bullet I would pay attention to. The original scam report and the second copy is going to ACS office in the borough where the child resides, not removal. Now on test day it could be the same, yes, but if they want to make it complicated, you're going to have child being removed from one place, but they reside in another place, all right? So it's going to the borough where the child resides. It will go to ACS in Manhattan if we have a child who resides outside the city or with other than their parent or guardian, like we took them out of a group home or something like that. Next bullet, I'm not too concerned with, where it says third copy goes to your youth coordination officer, fourth copy along with the aid, it goes to Youth Strategies Division, and then you file a copy with the DIR attached. Third piece of paper, DIR. Always, uniform member prepares and gives the pink copies to the complainant or victim, and then writes the ICAD number on it if it's a result of a radio run. The cop will submit the DIR to the desk officer with the 61 worksheet and the aided. Next piece of paper, aided report, not always done. Only going to be done, obviously, if we're removing a kid. The cop prepares it, submits it to the desk officer with the DIR. The desk sends a copy to Youth Strategy Division along with the fourth copy of the scam report. Next piece of paper, notice of removal. Patrol sergeant directs the cop to serve this on the parent or guardian or affix to the door if the parent or guardian is not present. Remember, this one we're not always going to do. Think about what it's called. Notice of removal means we're removing a kid. So don't let them get you on test day, all right? This only gets done when we actually remove a kid, all right? The cop serves the parents if they're home or affixes to the door of the residence if they're not. If affixed to the door because they weren't home, you must also mail a copy out in 24 hours. If the residence is in another command, the desk officer will have that command serve or nail in mail. If the parent or guardian or residence is not known or is outside New York City, now we have to follow 21603. Desk officer forwards a copy of the notice and affidavit to the precinct youth coordination officer, and whoever served or nailed and mailed must be the one to make the affidavit, which is the last piece of paper if we remove a kid. Affidavit. Now here's why I told you to be careful up above. Look what the first bullet says. The desk officer will countersign and mail to family court borough of removal, not borough of residence like we did up above for the scam report. Borough of removal in 24 hours, except weekends and holidays. The desk officer will ensure notification efforts are noted thereon. We have a little recap of those forms and the tricky parts that I told you right there on the bottom. Next page. Hang in there. You got, I don't know, like 15, 20 minutes. I know it's a lot of shit, but you got to listen to it. I mean, you don't have to. You can all leave, but that would be stupid. All right, so who's getting the case? A lot of this is a review from 207, other procedures, all right? Special Vicks will get the case if we have a kid less than 11 abused by a parent or guardian or any age for any sex, crime, or attempt by anyone. Squad gets everything else. If Special Victims IRTU, Incident Response Tracking Unit, calls the command and wants us to investigate child abuse, we will do a 61 if necessary, and that is it. We don't do anything else because they did the report of suspected child abuse. And if we do a 61, what are we going to call it? It's going to be called Investigate Child Abuse. Two more actors in here. Youth Coordination Officer. You will inspect all copies of your scam reports, including forms done by Transit and Housing, and you give it a serial number. So the precinct is given serial numbers for all of these scam reports. Transit does not, and Housing does not as well. Review other precinct records, confer with the DV sergeant, and assign squad investigator to develop info. Check juvie reports, complaint index, aided index, DIRs for previous contacts from the home. Make a folder for each scam report kid, removed or not, and with copies of all related forms in the folder. Review all forms, and if something comes up, you're going to do a complaint revision, aka DD5, and forward to the squad. Enter results of your review on the rear of the scam report and forward to the Youth Strategies Division. Maintain a liaison with appropriate ACS field office. Next actor, last actor of this procedure, DV. Review DIR for accuracy and completeness. Hopefully that does not sound proper. When you see review for accuracy and completeness, usually your answer should be a boss. But here, this is a cop's duty. So this is correct. Don't let them fool you on test day. You're going to record the DIR in the precinct domestic incident log, enter info from the DIR into the domestic incident report database, forward a copy of the DIR to the precinct domestic violence investigator, maintain a file of DIRs including copies of scam reports when attached. You ought to monitor at-risk locations and victims, relay info of any other offense committed within the household from where the child resides, from where the child was removed, to the youth coordination officer and the assigned investigator. And last, maintain contact with complainants and advise them of their rights and availability of shelter. Radio codes, right there for you, all right? You got to know anytime a radio code is in the book, you don't want to give up an easy point right there. Let's go to, God, there's so much stuff. So much. Go to page 55. Handcuffing kids in the school. A lot of changes to this procedure, a lot of actors involved. I think is an important procedure. What do I know? I'm just saying I think it is. So we have two definitions up top. Constructive restraint and alternative restraint. What is constructive restraint? Physical control with no restraining devices, using minimal force necessary to control movement to ensure the safety of the child. Alternative restraint. Velcro device for possible safety or flight risk and or non-compliant child, to be used only by MOS trained in them. Also, school safety agents carry them. They are trained as well. It's bold. Please highlight. Second time I think I said it tonight. I should have said it about 70 other times. These restraints will not be used for somebody 16 years of age or older. 16 or older, we are going to use what? Metal handcuffs. If you didn't know that, just stop right now. I'll give you the 105 or whatever it was, $96, all right, back. Where it may be necessary to restrain a student when possible and when appropriate and consistent with personal safety, MOS should confer and coordinate with school admin staff, including the principal, dean, teacher, guidance counselor, to reduce, eliminate the necessity to use force. Absent some type of exigence, handcuffs or alternative restraints, Velcro cuffs, should not be placed on a student while in class, cafeteria, or area where other students are located. So that's the first thing you want to get in your head. We don't want to handcuff the kid in front of other kids, all right? We don't want to embarrass him. We ought to coordinate with school officials to have students removed to a semi-private location like the principal's office, school security office, etc., when possible. Great test question coming right here. Metal cuffs should not be used on students less than 12 without prior approval, whenever possible, of one of the following. You got a list of 3. You can't, there's not much thinking here for them to write a question. They just got to make up another actor. So who can give us permission? Precinct NCO sergeant, patrol sergeant, school safety supervisor. I would just throw in, if I'm writing a question, desk officer, another boss, just to confuse you, all right? Metal cuffs will only be used as a last resort when other means of restraint are not effective and the student, MOS, or others would face a risk of bodily harm if metal handcuffs were not used. Incidents that are not criminal but related to school discipline only are generally not a police matter. So it says MOS will ordinarily defer to school officials for appropriate action. Low-level nonviolent misdemeanors or violations may be referred to school officials for appropriate action after a review of the incident by MOS and confer with school principal or designee. For the safety of all, department policy is to rear handcuff students who are arrested in a school facility unless mitigating circumstances dictate not to. Consideration should be given to a student's age or special needs status when determining how a student is restrained. A decision may be made not to rear handcuff or use restraints when special circumstances exist. Strongly consider or attempt verbal commands, constructive or alternative restraints prior to metal cuffs. Watch out for the next bullet now, because it mentions an age here, and we mentioned an age up above. So it says a student less than 12 will not be handcuffed to a restraining bar, a chair, railing, or other fixed objects, and must be kept under constant observation by the cop or school safety agent at all times. So do not let them say you can handcuff this kid who's 11 to a bar with the permission of one of those 3 up above, the NCO sergeant, etc., right? The one of the 3 up above is a different rule when it comes to metal cuffs. Over here, no good. They can get a lot of people because it mentions 12 years old, actually mentions less than 12 2 times in the same procedure, okay? Be careful of those 2 bullets. For a child under 16, use reasonable belief standard to determine the level of restraint. Consider alternatives. Generally for a child less than 12, but any child less than 16 is eligible. Next page. They have a list of factors to consider when you're determining what type of restraint to use. That's just a general list. I'm not going to waste time on that now because I want to try and get to another procedure. Here's the actual steps now for the cop when we're going to handcuff or lock a kid up in school. Notify, confer, and coordinate with school safety division personnel and principal or designee prior unless there is some type of exigence. So there's two people, school safety division personnel and the principal. If conferral is not possible prior to effecting an arrest due to the exigence, then notification of the arrest must be made to both as soon as practical after the collar or restraint for emotional issues. Discuss the option of referring low-level, nonviolent crimes and violations by a student in a school facility to school officials for appropriate action in lieu of arrest or summons. Inform school personnel of decision to arrest and basis unless there's fight, flight, etc. Remove student if possible. Again, I'm going to harp on that. Watch out as you read for the next 13 days, the ifs, the must, always, nevers, etc., right? So remove student if possible to a semi-private location like the principal's office, etc. Inform student of the authority and cause unless physical resistance, flight, other factors render impractical. Use appropriate restraints when applicable. Request NCO sergeant if unavailable. Patrol supervisor to respond if an arrest is effected. Watch out for that. There is a pecking order. The first person, if they hit you on test day, you're going to call when you have a collar is the NCO sergeant. Unless he's unavailable, then patrol sergeant. Do not let them reverse it on you, all right? And another good test question could come right here, or I should say a choice. Don't remove a kid from a school to a department facility if it involves the commission of a violation. We are not bringing them in the house for a violation. Keep the student under constant supervision regardless of the level of restraint used. Next actor, precinct NCO sergeant or patrol supervisor. Respond to the school, verify the probable cause exists to support the arrest, assess the type of restraint used, and direct change in level of restraint as appropriate. If the school administrator objects to the arrest, advise them to contact their legal, and definitely highlight this. You ought to notify the precinct COXO duty captain when metal cuffs used on a student less than 12 for any amount of time. That is a great point to incorporate into a test question. Next actor, NCO sergeant. At the start of the school year, meet with principals in the command to apprise them of the department's cuffing guidelines. The next two, school safety agents, don't be concerned with their duties. You're not going to be asked their duties. Top of the next page. If a juvie is removed to a department facility, notification must be made to the juvenile crime desk. The crime desk will assist supervisors in making a determination whether a juvenile should be released on a juvenile report system worksheet or processed as a JD. Whether probable cause to arrest exists will be determined by us, while the desires of school personnel, principal, teacher, etc., may be considered by the cop in determining whether an arrest is warranted. The views of school personnel are not controlling. If a conflict arises between a cop who wishes to effect an arrest of a student and school personnel, the cop will request a response of who? Again, the pecking order. Precinct NCO sergeant, or if unavailable, patrol sergeant. I think that's another great point. Whenever you see conflict with us and another agency, good test question there, right? Under no circumstances will school personnel be permitted to interfere with an arrest. The precinct NCO sergeant, or if unavailable, the patrol sergeant has deemed warranted. All right. We got 3 minutes to go through all of 216. Let me see. 216. Let's look at this chart. Page 63. And by looking at this chart, I would say based on history, the most important procedure is DOA. Let's go to DOA. What page are you on? You are on page 66. By the way, when you review DOA, whenever you get to it, in the next 13 days, because you got to read everything again, I would also pull out the DOA procedure in 218. Read this one and read 218, because they're all along the same lines, obviously, when you're talking about a DOA. All right, so 216.04. Uniformed member of the service, get a bus and a patrol sergeant to respond. Exclude unauthorized persons from the scene. Obtain witnesses' names. If suspicious, detain the witnesses at the scene. There's a lot of ifs coming up. If possible, screen the DOA from public view. If publicly exposed, cover with waterproof coverings. Where do we get them from? The sergeant's car has 4 of them. Get the facts and notify the desk officer ASAP. Death pronouncement, which is going to be made by EMT, ambulance, or paramedic. If it's questioned by anyone, you got to have the DOA removed to a hospital or call a doctor to the scene. The only person allowed to disturb a body or its effects, here's a good acronym, TED-DMD from DC. Technician or investigator from Highway CIS. ESU, I always point this one out. They're not always allowed. ESU only if the body is in a subway tunnel or on the train tracks. Doctor, paramedic, EMT, ME or assistant, DA or assistant, detective bureau or detective squad member, and crime scene unit. The box on the right talks about what we do with the 95 ID tag. No tricks in there. Go to the next page. Uniformed member of the service. You are going to make an aided or a PAR. We know we're not doing both. You would never do both. Depends on where this DOA is coming from, all right? Name, shield, of morgue operator taking a body, or name of the funeral person taking the body will go in the detail section. Also, name, address, relationship of person authorizing removal and the person to whom the body was released goes in the detail section of either the aided or the PAR. Next piece of paper. Complaint report. Always done. Next piece of paper. Not next piece of paper. Activity log entry gets done. ID, description, clothing worn of the DOA. Name of the person who pronounced the DOA. Name and ID of the person to whom the body was released. And you will safeguard the body and its effects until the patrol sergeant gives you instructions. And what you could see in the star, that was a prior answer on a sergeant test. Very easy. You can't do nothing until the sergeant gives you directions. Everybody in the room here sit on a DOA? How about this? Anybody in the room not sit on a DOA? Good. So then that should be some motivation. I hope you sat on a DOA that had fucking maggots jumping off the body. Soon as you got off that elevator, you know that whiff, that smell you got. Remember that smell every day for the next 13 days. And stay motivated, because when you become a sergeant, when you smell that shit, you stay right here and say, you got to go in there, search the body, and you got to sit there until the morgue comes, all right? And you go back and you leave, all right? You got to stay motivated. All right, desk officer duties. Squad gets notified always. If we got a homicide, suicide, or suspicious, the squad will go crime scene, and you know that's a conflict with 212.04, where it says the patrol sergeant notifies crime scene. Next call, ME, always get the ME case number for the aided. Tell the ME if a plastic sheet or a bag is a factor in the death. And if the ME fails to show in 1 hour, make a follow-up call. All calls to the ME go in your telephone record. Now we have some ifs. If it's a homicide, suicide, or suspicious, the desk will notify operations. If it's a homicide or unusual, the desk will notify communications. If the DOA was pulled from navigable waters by other than harbor, then we notify harbor. Desk officer, direct command clerk to enter the 61 into Omni from the worksheet. File lower half of your 95 tag in the property receipt book. Direct the officer who discovered a homicide vic to report to the morgue 0900 hours next day. assign a cop first on the scene. Or if not available, another cop who is not RDO. Tell identifying cop to arrange for a relative or other person who knew the deceased, who can ID the body, to go to the morgue to ID the body in his presence. The cop will ID the body to 2 MEs, and if they were DOA as a direct result of police action, don't use MOS involved or who actually witnessed. Box on the bottom left. To close a DOA 61, you need 4 things. This would get a lot of people. DOA is identified. That's easy. ME states the cause is natural. That's easy. The next 2, be careful. Relatives have to be present. And obviously, if they're present, they are notified. Don't let them say relatives were notified. They have to be present as well to close a 61 for a DOA. And if you cannot close it, they remain unidentified or you can't make a notification. Now you're going to do a missing unidentified person report, and you're going to use a new 61 number. We're almost done. Next page. Patrol Sergeant. Ascertain that the squad, crime scene, and ops have been notified when necessary. Very important bullet. I would highlight it. 3rd time or 4th time I told you. If the DOA lived alone or died at other than their residence, you got to have the body and premise searched in front of witnesses when possible. So the when possible only attaches to the witnesses. The search has to be done. If we get witnesses, use them. If we don't have witnesses, we still have to search the body and the premise, all right? And whoever searches safeguards the body. Gender does not matter. We know that. The person is dead. They don't care. Check the cop's activity log and certify accuracy by signing rank and name. Make your own activity log entries. And a little point at the end of the procedure from the additional data. It says we can move a body offensive to public decency, but if it's suspicious, we need approval from 2 people, the ME and the assigned detective. All right, that's a lot of stuff coming your way and a lot of stuff we didn't get to. Please read it all that we didn't do. Keep reviewing this. I'll see you all next Monday. Can you help stack the chairs for us, please, here? Just stack a few right in your row. Greatly appreciated.